Hi everyone and welcome back to another card making video where I play with stencils and inks, my favorite techniques lately. So today I'm playing with this stencil from Waffle Flower. This comes from the latest release and it gives you 3 different stencils that when you combine them it is going to create for you really easily 2 adorable images, a snail and a hedgehog. Now these are the perfect stencils for a fall card, so let's combine them together and welcome the new season. Now what I'm trying to show you, but I don't know if you can see in the video, there are engravings on all the stencils. So you see 1, 2, 3, there are numbers, so you know the steps. And I promise you it's not at all complicated. Now I'm going to cut out a panel and I do have these nesting dies. The outside panel is going to cut out a rectangle with a stamp shape, which I absolutely love. The inside is going to cut out just a panel so that I can work there, create my image, and then I can layer it on the other one. Now to do all the stenciling I'm going to use my grip mat just because I can hold at the same time my inside rectangle, the one that I'm going to use at the top, and hold the stencils that I place on top as well. So I'm going to start with a stencil that says number 1. Here it is, I'm going to align it and there are engravings on the outside, so it is super easy to align on top of your panel. And I'm going to have some fun with my Distress Oxide inks today and my blending tools. Now I'm going to go step by step exactly as the stencils say, and you will see how this beautiful image comes together. Every time I'm using a new ink, I am going to make sure that I have the lid on my screen so you can see exactly which color I'm using, but as always you will find everything I'm using linked down below in the description. Now I'm moving my stencil to step number 2 and I did forget to color an area at the very bottom with stencil number 1, but don't worry about it, I will go back and realize it at some point and I will go back and do it again. I'm adding my vintage photo color. I'm also going to do a little bit of shading through the stencil without moving it at all. This is going to make my image come to life, and just by adding a little bit of shading. I am using my shading brushes just because they are smaller and I can control exactly where I'm adding my darker color. So I went with vintage photo, now I'm using Walnut stain. And I'm going to color the cup as well since the cup is here. So this is Wild Honey and you will see that on today's video I'm going to bring in all my favorite color palette for fall. These are my go-to colors when I am going to create a fall card with Distress Oxide inks. And notice how I always try to add a second color if I can by adding just a touch in one side, which is going to bring everything to life. Now I need to color the branch, so I am going with a really dark shade here. I'm not going to bring in any extra color, any second color. And let's peel it off and you can see how it already comes together. Really adorable. Now I'm moving to step number 3. This is where I'm going to color the body of my hedgehog. I'm using antique linen, which I think is the lighter brown that I have in my collection of Distress Oxides. I'm also going to add a little bit of shading on one side, again, just to make it look more interesting so that when I peel it off it doesn't look flat. Now for the leaves, I'm going to use the same colors that I used to color the cup, the coffee cup. So again, Wild Honey for the whole area. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of shading with the Ripe ink pad. And notice how I use the big blending brushes for the bigger areas. And for the shading, I'm using these smaller shading brushes. They have, again, real brush out at the tip, so it is really easy to blend together, especially when it is oxide ink, but it gives me more control on exactly where I want to add the shading. Now I want to add some splattering only at the area where the leaves are, and for that I'm going with browns. I did cover up the rest with just another stencil just to make sure that the splattering is going to fall only where the leaves are for the tree. So let me peel off the stencils and you can see how lovely it comes together, just adorable. I'm moving on to the next step, and here I'm going to do the eyes and the nose. Just use the darker shade of brown or even black if you want to. Then I'm going to bring in some red to do the mushroom. I'm not going to bring in a second color for the mushroom, but notice how I go lighter on one side and I really blend in the color and have it saturated on the other side. Now I'm using a scrap piece of paper just to make sure that I wipe off the stencil and I don't contaminate my inks. For the scarf, again, I'm going with the same colors that I used for the coffee cup and the leaves of the tree. This way I'm not introducing any new colors. I don't want to have a very busy palette, so I'm staying with the colors that I already have on my desk. Again, I'm going to do the same technique, adding a little bit of shadow at the bottom of the scarf. You will see that once I peel it off, it's going to look really rounded and dimensional. So just a little trick there will make a whole lot of difference. The same with the mushroom. Now this is where I realized that I forgot to do the little sky at the bottom, the background, so I'm just going to do it really quickly. And always keep in mind that you don't have to use all the steps, you can definitely omit some of them. So for example here you can add the hearts on the scarf or you don't have to, it's really up to you. One little detail, I need to add some color on the base of my mushroom, and then here is a little tip to make sure that your panel remains nice and flat. Peel off the backing from the paper instead of the other side around. And then I'm going to add some foam squares at the back and just place it on top of the other panel that I cut out that gives you that edge of a postal stamp. So I do have dimension and I have a backing. Now let's work on the background. For the background I went with burnt orange, which is a lovely cardstock by Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to place on top this stencil just to give a little bit of an interest on the background. And I should have switched to a bigger grip mat. This one is kind of pretty much the same size as my panel, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it doesn't really hold the stencil in place, just in one side, as you can see. Anyway, I'm going all around with Distress Oxide, Wild Honey, and you can see that these Oxide inks go lovely on top of darker colors with no issues at all. And now I'm going to do a little bit of stamping. This panel is going to be the background and I want to add some interest back there. For that I'm going to use these stamps and just use some stamps here and there. Mainly I'm going to create a couple of clusters on two opposite corners, and for that I'm using black ink. Now I'm using my stamping platform just to make sure that I get a good impression with the bigger stamps, but when I have a smaller stamp, I find it is way easier to use just a smaller stamping block. Now this is an afterthought. I decided that I want to have the same detail on top of my panel, the top panel, and that's why I'm going to do a little bit of stamping here. I just layered the stamp where it should be. And then on top of that I'm going to layer my panel, just because I want to keep and maintain that white space and I don't want to have any smudges there. I'm going to use some masking tape and then I'm going to stamp there, so I do get that lovely detail that aligns with what is underneath. And guess what? Although I went with all that trouble, I decided to stick it on an angle. Anyway, now you know how you can do it in case you want to have everything beautifully lined up. Now let's do some finishing touches. This is a lovely little sentiment set that gives you lots of sentiments that you can use again and again throughout the year. I love the font because it's nice and bold, it really makes a statement, and it comes with really versatile sayings. Now I'm going to stamp that with black ink. And this is the die set that I used the bigger rectangles to cut out and create my main panels. Now here you can use them to cut out this sentiment. If you want, you can combine. I decided to go simple and use only one layer. And an extra little detail to finish it off, I'm adding some white dots on the mushroom by using my white contour liner. So that concludes the card for today. I hope that you had fun, that you got inspired. Links to everything I use can be found down below in the description. Thank you for joining me and I'll see you all next time.